Welcome, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer 1745 here with a start to a new alt series within my standard Hearts of Iron 3 Black Eye series. Okay, earlier on, Italy had made several ill-advised invasions into Wales, never secured a port. I had, at that time, 0 transports or anything really effectively to try to do it. Oh, I may have had a few of these auxiliary vessels, but I was just thinking of invading my troops into a hopeless cause, a lost cause. So I didn't do that. And you also know that I want to experiment, and so I've got to wait until basically June 44 to have a D-Day happen. And I want to see whether these forts are a help or a hindrance, actually. And that's an important thing. And you need to know that. I need to know that, because if we know we're facing a major scripted invasion, and we should be, again, as I was telling some of the audience here, because we are doing this live as well as pre-recorded for YouTube, about scripting and its benefits and negatives. Because the AI is so bad here, there is a scripted invasion that will happen only under certain conditions. One of them, at least certain key provinces, is I think what they check for. Maybe London, I don't remember. Controlled by Britain. Then a scripted invasion that can vary along this coast, maybe down here, I'm not sure. I know it won't land, though Revolver Held's new stuff will expand some of that. But the current one lands an invasion here. And if they take over the province and grant the province to the Allies, like this one happens, then these forts, like if they're coming in here for the real D-Day landing, these forts actually will be a hindrance to me, the German player, and not a help. So we need to know this. I need to test this out. So I'm going to continue down this other path. But for now, we're going to take an opportunity here to see if we can support this invasion of Britain. So this is going to be an alt series, so we'll eventually have a dead end. Basically, the dead end will be the conquest of Britain, but we'll see how long it goes. Or, of course, it may be dead end at whether this gets snuffed out or my forces get in there and get clobbered, and that's how it ends. Let me read. Okay, just a second. You're very welcome, Evil Greenie. Thank you so much. Well, who's invading? Well, this is actually Italy is invade. This base region is granted temporarily or whatever to the U.S. to try to get the U.S. to station lots of fighters and bombers, as you can see down here, to try to get them to bomb Germany and maybe station more naval assets and things to protect Britain. Well, Italy made a unannounced invasion, and it successfully grabbed the port. It's an Uber port, 50 level port, 50 level airbase, 12th level sea stuff. So it got in and grabbed this stuff. 12th level anti-air, 40th level radar. That's why we can see everything that's going on in Britain. So what we're going to do is rush all of these. We can see all of these guys. You can see all of the SS units. My Waffen SS is all streaming to Dieppe, and I've dropped in. I had these guys when this started in my holding queue here, and so I dropped them all in here into Dieppe. So we're going to race to Dieppe and see if we can support the Italian invasion. An Uber port? What? Yeah, well. Okay, we've won into car. Okay, we have control of the Mediterranean and twin engine airframes. So that is grayed out. We'll improve twin engine fighter types. So we've won against Bhutan. They're attacking again. They're still fighting in India. Oh, just for those of you who are watching live on Twitch here, this episode happens there's one intermediate episode that will be being released tonight. I'm sort of behind on making episodes, so this is you're missing out. The reason you didn't know about this is it happens during tonight's episode, so you're jumping ahead a little bit for spoilers, as it were. Okay, we're gonna let the aircraft carriers continue to improve. Doesn't look good for my pocket up there. Okay, we are here. So now what we need to do is get some good divisions that are here thinking on board. Good. So these heavy panzer units, because I've reinforced them with motorized infantry, or mechanized infantry battalion. Oh, that's actually a regiment. Did I? No, it's a battalion. Yeah, they call it a regiment. It's a battalion and a reconnaissance unit, I believe, is what I've added to it. They're almost divisions now. Send them to Nordland. Many of these divisions are under their historical commanders. Sometimes, well, a lot of the historical commanders switched and changed over time, and some are holding down better jobs. Okay, we're all full up. Okay, now that we're ready to move, we still have both air and potential naval power to intercept them, and I'm not going to be sending in any sea-based escorts. So we're going to massively set up naval strikes to well, protect them, help protect them. Okay, well, these guys, we're gonna also do a little bit of an Adler Tag, Eagle Day here. Put up a lot of intercepting air. Don't know if we'll win that, but naval strike just that province. Okay, you come up here. You'll intercept. Okay, now here. I'm doing it on passive, just as I know many of you who've been watching know. I want them to sort of, once they get shot up bad enough, whatever that means for passive, I want them to come back and repair. I don't want them out suiciding themselves, fighting to the last, and having to be completely replaced. The naval strikes with the heavy bombers. Medium bombers there. Trying to sort of, some of it concentrated, some of it spread out a bit. Get into whatever you can. Yeah. Air intercepting. Oh, air intercept passive. Here we go. So that we We'll definitely battle it out over the channel. Come on. I like their air base symbols, but they're a little bigger than the actual click zones. There's that. Go up. Just that one there. No, not ground base. Yeah, just the one. Did I assign these guys? I don't know if I did. Let me redo it if I did. Oh. There we go. Okay, so now we are loaded up here. Let's go. We'll transport right up into that. Into Kingsland. You know, see there's air bases, battles going on already. Oop, lots of American fighters coming up. That didn't last long. Here we are battling some of the Americans. Good. Don't know that these immersive squadron, these guys, now this one's missing it, its symbol, but is really a good idea. I mean, it's cool immersion, but I don't know if they work well. You can see we're messing up the air power, or America's air power there. As we're battling, wow, that's a pretty big air battle there. Looks like we're coming out on top there. Naval striking. Okay, medium fuel tank research. Okay, which will allow, no, wrong tab. More research will come down. More types. Flying boats. Everyone knows how much I love those. So, light cruiser armor. I'm going to stop that, I think, because, yeah. It's going to research faster than the engines. And I want my light cruisers fast. Not burdened down by armor. We'll move this up to naval bomber prototypes. Okay, and we are here, and they are counterattacking, so we made it in time. They're throwing a couple of garrison units almost suicidally into us. Go down here. Okay, we've won here. Okay, these guys. Let's send them back. Hey, here. Now some of my units will be in better command range. What are we doing up here? Okay, they've we'll strategically redeploy them down here. They're gonna win. They might not be able to pound their way into the mountains, but they can defend against anything those mountain troops try to do into the lowlands. Let's look and see what we're getting down here. Oh, they ran out of supplies. Damn. Okay, that's why they're not moving forward anymore. Well, let's join that, and these guys will plow into this unit. Big stack, and these guys will come into there. Yes, the Battle of Britain, as it were, 2.0, yep. Okay, we've won the battle in Kingsland here. Now that will give us chance to break out. Let's see what we can do. Vinking under Steiner. Let's go. Oh, we're still technically defending. And I hope Italy's able to able to supply us well enough. Yeah, that should be, everybody's moving and attacking somewhere. And hangars, we're gonna let that go. Okay. These guys are running out of supplies here, so let's... Well, what we can do, well, not necessarily, oh, we maybe here. Let's fly supplies in. But, you on board ships as well. Them up good. Totenkopf and Deep Standarta. Let's see what pullets I can get on. Yes, they can fit. Probably that's all, but we'll check and see. Oh, they can get on too. Great. But now these guys, we will also transport them up to Kingsland. No, I don't think it would be a good move actually. Evil Greenie asked chat whether I should do a second invasion, mainly because I don't have real proper escorts for these guys, and if they had to sit out there in the water and invade in, it'll take longer. Where if I can just move in and secure, got this port here, secure another port, hopefully Italy has the transports to be able to supply us, because there is plenty of port space there to supply us. I think that would be best. Yes, that is true. Yes. Yes, Hitler-Jugend. And I don't know how much you know about this, the stuff went on. Hitler-Jugend didn't behave too well with captured prisoners. Particularly, they shot up or killed some Canadians. So I would say the Canadians were fairly restrained about that, but you may notice when you see the pictures of them with captured Hitler-Jugend guys. These are several, well, to me at least, fairly well known photos, and they've all got like bloody noses and things. They're all beat up. So I think when the Canadians were capturing the Hitler-Jugend guys, in the sort of immediate aftermath of, I forget exactly who they massacred, a platoon or somebody or some of Canadians. The Canadians were beating them up. Okay, these guys actually need to come down to here now. Hopefully that path will be reasonably good. Yeah, that's alright. Ooh, they're a little more beat up than I like, so no. Actually, they're sort of beat up from there, so let's send them out to here. Well, good to hear, Evil Greenie. See, this is one thing I've traveled a bit in Europe, but I don't know how well people are educated about the war, because I know in America, they're no longer educated, really. Oh, they know Nazis bad, but I bet you even college graduates here in the US, more than half of them couldn't even hardly tell you why the Nazis were bad. They just know Nazis equal bad. Oh yes, oh yes, there was that most assuredly. The SS were ideological crusaders, and we would give them fuel. Okay, got more than enough fuel right now. Got more. We got so much it'll be zeroing it out. Oh, you and me. You only also have that'll. And so that they thought they were in the right. They thought they were in some sort of holy crusade. So they disobeyed the rules of war. And they did that as early as in the invasion of France. Though more often than not, not always, notice I just said more often than not, they did not do that with Western troops. Not like they did on the Eastern Front. On the Eastern Front, they did that a lot. Wholesale massacres and things like that. And I think it also comes down to ideology as well. They thought people in the East were sort of subhuman, so they thought they could treat them that way. Where they sort of saw people in the West as not them, so not as good as them, but not so subhuman either. So I think that all comes down to part of it. And I know in one of the other, and all I can do is say it again here, other episodes I talked about, I forget for which series, about capturing prisoners. They're in the laws or rules of war, and there are actual laws as well as general sort of rules. In the laws of war, and I've watched even, there was back in the 80s, I think it was, a really good series on America's PBS Public Broadcasting about a sort of a roundtable with a lot of, including people like Westmoreland, the head of the U.S. military in Vietnam, and others very high-level people, as well as platoon sergeants and, you know, captains and those kind of things, about different battlefield stuff. And I've watched them several times many, many years ago. And one of the episodes was dealing with prisoners of war and such. You do not have to accept the surrender of an enemy. Meaning, if they wave the white flag, you can keep shooting at them. If they run away, they're running away, you can keep shooting at them. You do not have to accept the surrender. Because sometimes you just won't. You can't, because they got their hands up, and this guy wants to surrender, but his three buddies over there, you know, within vision, don't want to surrender, and they're going to shoot you. And so this guy that you have right next to you with his hands up if you turn your back on him, he may pick up his gun again and shoot you in the back. And you can't, and you alone as an individual don't have the ability to control this one guy who's surrendering and deal with the other three guys over, 20, 50 yards away shooting at you. So you've got to shoot this one guy here to save your life, to then deal with the other guys that are still a threat. But once you accept a surrender, then you must treat them with the appropriate laws of war for dealing with prisoners of war, or at least do your damnedest, your best attempt to. So you don't have to accept a surrender. But the cases where, and there was one case in Greece with some British soldiers as well. So there were a few other cases there with the Waffen-SS, but they were honestly a bit more isolated. Again, mass happenings on the east, a bit more isolated in the west. Once they accepted surrender, then that becomes a problem. Yes, they did use them as human shields. Now, because history's messy, and even, if you will, say the good guys are also bad at times, in the United States during the American Civil War, there's at least one major case. Towards the end of the American Civil War, the Confederacy developed landmines, and maybe literally the very first incident of landmines, or if not the very first one of them. So this is back in late 1864 or very early 1865. The Confederacy developed landmines. So either it was part of Sherman's march to the sea or some other pushing into the South in the closing days of the Civil War. The Confederates were starting to plant landmines in the road in front of the advancing Union troops, and covering them up, that they whether it was hours or days ahead. And these weren't very sophisticated landmines, but they'd blow up and either blow your foot off, which of course you blow your foot off in the 1860s. You can just die of various, infections and diseases, a week later, whether you live or not. Or, of course, you could live, but it could also immediately kill you. I'm not saying it wouldn't. But, so these were deadly, but these weren't, the bouncing Bettys of Vietnam or really highly sophisticated landmines, but they were real functioning landmines. And the Union, which did, thanks for following the channel, which did practice more so than the Confederacy total war against the South. Especially they went with very strong economic wars, destroying infrastructure, people's homes, livelihoods, and that kind of thing. Much more so than the Confederacy ever did. Confederacy fighting for the slaves, bad thing, not defending the Confederacy fighting for the slaves. But the Union, what they did is they took Confederate prisoners of war, once they found out about these landmines, and made them walk in front to clear the landmines. Because they thought that was such an underhanded, evil, whatever your adjective you wish to call it, way of fighting the war, using landmines. So they used Confederate prisoners of war, I think in the hopes that if the Confederates knew that, the people that were going to be tripping the mines were going to be other Confederates, they wouldn't plant them. But so even the U.S. did use, in its own Civil War against what would be its own citizens, used that kind of stuff. Well, yeah, the Japanese, in a minor defense, not saying they were right or justified, but they hadn't signed some of the Geneva and other conventions dealing with the prisoners of war. So the Japanese were sort of going on their Bushido codes, which basically if somebody surrenders, you have the right to kill them or do any other nasty thing. And they were god-awful evil to everybody, including Americans, including Chinese, including anybody that they took prisoners to. The Japanese were god-awful evil. And if you've watched or played Third Reich events, I forget the Siemens, and I should remember, and a few other Siemens executive who was in Shanghai, Nanking, I think. Nanking, Shanghai? Nanking. He was in Nanking. And they set up and saved many thousands of Chinese in buildings that they sort of controlled and kept the Japanese out, and reported it as a war crime, which got very little play in Germany, but they did. And so, yeah, the Japanese and the Germans did. But again, the Germans were hierarchical, and it's, the people that we want to eliminate, like the people in the East, we will, use however we want, including mass extermination, to where the people in the West, like the French prisoners of war, a lot of them were made to work. A lot of the French prisoners of war were made to work, but they were never, to my knowledge at least, done on a starvation sort of work situation like Polish or Soviet prisoners of war. Yes, the Soviet Union, it's worse than the Nazis, no doubt. One of the posters talked about they use scorched earth tactics. Yes, the Nazis or Hitler, the Nazis are thought to be killed somewhere between 6 and 12 million people. I think Stalin, 20 million people. Stalin killed, I think it was 12 million people in 1 year. And what is it? It's a word I'm not used to pronouncing. The Volga-Devor or something like that. When he starved out in the Ukraine, he set up a starvation program that I think it was 12 million people in 1 year died in the Ukraine before World War II started. Before World War II started, he killed 12 million Ukrainians through starvation. And that's why Ukrainians to this day don't want to be any part of any Russian anything. They hate the Russians because they still see it as Russians as much as Soviets. And they killed 12 million people through starvation in 1 year alone. And that was covered up by the American left. Yes, the Great Hunger catastrophe. But it was engineered. They actually had Soviet troops guarding the fields that had orders to shoot anybody who goes onto those fields to try to take food. It wasn't, yes, the Holodomor. So that they were, it was a policy, not just, the crops failed, because it was a bad year. It was a policy of murder. Now they also wanted to use they thought that the Ukrainians weren't getting in line with Soviet thought, and they wanted to use the food for other Soviet needs. But it wasn't because the crops failed. They engineered it. Now, of course, Mao kills even more people. Yep, and the Soviet soldiers, there's basically an estimation that almost every woman of any age was raped. Every woman of any age was raped in Berlin during the initial occupation phase. So that's what I've heard. It's sort of hard to imagine, but I'm going with it, that it's 70-80%, and including old ladies, everybody who survived the Battle of Berlin and was immediately around the Berlin occupation, all those women were raped. The Soviets did that, yes. And so Mao kills even more in his cultural revolutions and other elements of the stuff. More people died under communism in China. Under communism in China after World War II ended, I think, than died in World War II. Yes, I understand that, Mikhail. And this is what is not known in most of, at least in America, how evil. Because we can go, we can't have swastikas on Paradox's forums or somewhere shown and used. Or Germany can't have pictures of Hitler on its version of Paradox Games. But we can have Stalin and the communist hammer and sickle. What? They killed more. They are more evil. And there are professors within a mile of my home that are communists. Open, avowed communists teaching our youth. And so you have, and so they will support, Stalin had to break a few eggs and he did some wrong things and I really don't like what Stalin did, but he was trying for the good. What people could say, I was just trying to improve the human race genetically, so you support Hitler, but he just was going about it wrong. No, Stalin and Hitler both represent equal or great, Nazism is no more evil, and maybe even less evil, than Soviet or other sort of hardcore communism. I know I have a few fairly leftist viewers. Now, communism is part of the socialist continuum, and I know there are maybe some of you right now, others out there that support some level of socialism, socialized medicine, other stuff. That is different, though it's on the same continuum. So I think it's going down degrees of bad, and it's not all evil, but all the communist stuff of Stalin and Mao and all that stuff, and I believe it's not just the personalities at the top, it is the ideology that they're trying to have that needs that kind of things to readjust humanity. You have to kill off the people who think differently than you, and so if you have to kill them off, that is evil. Yeah, he did, but how many millions of people is it worth getting to the moon? And how many people went from, most of America was not electrified in 1930. Most of the region. Now, maybe a lot of America was urbanized, and more of the homes by 1930, or most of the homes, had electricity in big cities. But in a lot of small towns, right around 36, 38, someone, I'll eventually make it up, the Tennessee Valley Authority in here makes a huge amount of smallish dams that generate electricity. So they electrify Tennessee through that process, and as opposed to huge, the Hoover Dam, one of the bigger ones in the world, at least at the time, right up here, that still powers Los Angeles, and so the electrical wires run all the way through there. But I'm talking smaller scale stuff. That was only going on in the 30s. And so from the 30s, that were still horse-drawn plows, in the 30s, there was lots of them, the U.S. made it to the moon without killing millions of people. Because of freedom and capitalism. Ah, yes. The Ma click. You're very right. Yes. Yes, of course you are. So yes, so this is, so if you want to say how much, and I know there is a fair amount of Soviet or revisionism. I know we're talking politics, but I do that often on this channel. Soviet revisionism and people looking back, well, we were all working together, we were all striving for building this stuff because Stalin really made some really great dam and canal projects in the hearts of the Soviet Unions. Mikhail has sent me a bunch of information on that. And yeah, and they were all working together for this thing that they were doing. Yeah, but the U.S. did it even better and killed so much fewer people. If you talk about, how the in this scale, the hundreds, maybe even into the thousands, from say 1900 to 1970, lynchings by the KKK, which all the lynchings were illegal, that happened to blacks in America or something. So we're talking and I don't know the exact number, but it's like hundreds or thousands compared to millions of people that were killed by the government. The America's badness, if you will, is minuscule compared to everybody else. Yes, so that is my sort of answer to, yep, Stalin and, through, Khrushchev and whatnot, got the Soviets to the moon. They did, but god-awful price to pay to get there. Oh, we've lost our... Oh, we may even lose that. And that's sort of what I want to teach with this series, is not entirely the specific details always of history, but the lessons from history. And no, it isn't just. God, I know I don't have all the answers to big problems in the world. Uh-oh, we've lost a province here. Man, we don't have anybody nearby. Well, we sort of... Okay, these guys here. Let's send the mountain unit down here to take that back, deal with the province. Fortunately, we haven't needed to... Oh, and I want to send... No, they're here, yeah. Send them down to here. Rebase. Is that a good path? Yeah, that's a good path to avoid most stuff. Yep. If you're only trying to remember the good things about, like this Mikhail's pointing out about Stalin, and not his crimes, then you are forgetting the lessons of history. I am in no way trying to say that every single thing Stalin ever did, or everything even Hitler and the Nazis ever did, was bad. We can look at, oh, hey, Hitler, without killing millions of people doing it, organized up, generally government-based, but organized up the building of the Autobahns. Okay, that's a good achievement. Okay, Hitler was also had a program to try to stamp out smoking in Germany. Okay, that's a good goal, but none of those goals excuse the crimes that they committed. So you can acknowledge where and when they may have been right. You know, Hitler loved dogs. Okay, yeah, that doesn't mean you're an okay person or a good person. It just means Hitler liked dogs. And is an interesting fact about him and that kind of stuff. Doesn't mean that he's okay or good. And that's some of the stuff that I think with the... We have another unit? No, not yet. Okay. I'm reorganizing the mountain unit. But yeah, on the Great Leap Forward. And I know the Communist Party has, my opinion to some degree, and somebody who may know better could correct me, but in my opinion, and many of the current day policies of the Communist Party seem to be sort of kind of what nationalist China would be doing, in sort of state controlled kind of stuff would have been doing. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it doesn't justify. And this is some of the stuff that, again, some of the sort of interesting details, if you will, with TRE, I'm really happy to make, is to show what was going on at the time. I don't know if that's a true fact or not. I've sort of heard that as well. I just don't know how true it is. I don't know if there's good physical evidence. Some of the shall we say more salacious things that are said on a couple of the documentaries about Hitler, and I'm not going to repeat them because we're sort of keeping this advertiser friendly, were given to the U.S. by I forget, Pritzi, some One of them was an American who was for a while a close confidant of Hitler, I think, if I remember correctly. And I think that he very well have... oh yeah, no, I don't doubt you saw it in a documentary. But I think some of those reports, they are actual reports made. I'm not disputing that. But I think the person who was making them had an interest to say what he thought his listeners wanted to hear, meaning the more salacious he could, because he was sort of in trouble, or there could be a couple of different incidences, and I'm not exactly sure if I'm remembering everything correctly. And we're kicking Britain's butt down here. Okay, what are we... All these guys are attacking good. And not all of... Well, okay, are all... Yeah. So I don't trust it. Not that it's not true. I just don't trust the source, the original source. That's all. So you're not wrong in saying it, because I have no proof otherwise. It's just the source to me is suspect. No, I've not heard that about brass ball bearings. Hi, Toller. Tollner? Sorry. I've not heard that about brass ball bearings. Okay, interesting thing about Nazi trains. I've watched a documentary, got it saved to make a bunch of events from eventually. As you may know, the Nazis tinkered with everything, and sort of the German characteristic, I will tease Germans again here on this, is trying to make everything better, over-engineering things. And we can look at particularly like their tank production, is that they would be going along, oh, get some feedback. Oh, well, if you do this hatch differently, it'll be better. And so the factories would go, oh, okay, well, we have these 50 tanks ready to ship out to the front. Well, let's send them back into the factory, remove the hatch as it currently is, and stick on the new hatch, and delay getting out there, but also delay the production of new tanks to make the current sort of production of tanks good, or as best they could be to send them out. So they were constantly tinkering with bad industrial policies. But the one thing they didn't do that, and their whole thing were trains, or were steam engines. They set up fairly early on one type of locomotive, sort of an emergency production locomotive, but of relatively good quality, but of reasonably simple manufacture, and they produced the hell out of those locomotives. They just massive amounts of them. They didn't change them for one little bit. They had them all made out from different factories, but all made to the same type, and they did that, and they're all pretty good. And that was the one area where they sort of used American, if you will, production techniques and kept the same one. So I have not heard that about brass ball bearings ever. Not saying it's wrong, but I've just never heard of it. For early Hitler, one book that I read many years ago, still have on my shelf, is by Charles Flood, on Hitler, and I would recommend it, and it's specifically on Hitler's rise to power, if that's what you call Hitler, early Hitler. It's Hitler before 1933. Yeah, well, Maoism doesn't work, so this is the Chinese Communist Party, which in no way am I going to excuse any of their, shall we say, current behavior. I'm going to stop this attack. But they are trying to do things that work. And so this is in no way am I saying is good or I agree with or want to have it. Fascism works, okay? Doesn't work as well as capitalism. Capitalism works better. Capitalism is unfair, but unfair is good I know communist and socialist types will disagree with me on that, but unfair is good so long as no one is starving in the streets. You know, they have some place to live, some at least minimal apartment, they have at least minimal decent food, they have at least minimal decent education. It's all right that someone has billions of dollars and flies around in 10 private jets all the time. That's okay. They can have a house built out of diamonds. That's okay, so long as within your society people aren't starving and have, you know, basic capabilities. It's fine for income inequality. Income inequality is good. Now, if you're talking about the 19th century in which you had starving kids, homeless kids of 5 years old or whatever on the streets of London that, you know, are just trying to survive, and then you have rich equivalent to billionaires at that time living it up, that is a bad thing. And what solves that for most of the Western world is capitalism. Now, I'm not a pure capitalist. I mean, you need some government controls and limitations and some programs to help the people in need. The question is how many programs and how big of programs and what kind of programs you have. But so income inequality is a good thing, not a bad thing. It's just you don't want to have people in such a bad way that they can't make a decent life. So capitalism works best, but fascism also works. Statism, which is different than fascism. No, they're going after the CAGs. Good. Also works, and that sort of statism is more what I think communist China is doing today. Support that attack. Jaeger division here. Okay, well, mixed systems, yes, but where's the balance? So you see, I believe in how shall I say it? I believe that it is best to have as most economic and personal freedom as possible, and economic and personal freedom as possible, which also means fewer taxes as well. So we can get into how big of a where the mix should be. No problem. Well, we're going to end, not the stream now, we're just going to end this episode. So everybody on Twitch, just hang on, nothing's going to change here, but I'm going to end the episode. So everybody on YouTube watching this later, you've missed at least reading the comments while I've been commenting on them. Thank you guys for watching. Thanks for liking the videos. And of course, if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. And you can post your questions, comments, suggestions, ideas, including on the topic of the evils of communism and Nazism that we've been discussing here, as well doing an SS invasion of Britain. We're going after London here. So thanks everybody for watching. See you next time for more Hearts of Iron.